tell me we're ready and I'll open this up.
I'll start recording. And then I'll get Dan to put this on. Dan, want to go live? Oh, all right. All right, just checking. Karen, can you hear us all right? Okay.
Good, Golden? Okay, I will open this special audit committee meeting June 13th, 2025 at 9:02 a.m. I will call the meeting to order and ask if there are any citizens to be heard either online, as it's clear there's not in the commission chambers. Okay, moving on. General business action items, look for an approval or look to approve the minutes for the meeting of 6/4.
Motion to approve meetings.
Do we need a roll call?
Yeah, we probably ought to do introductions around. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate that. Let's do that before, if that's okay, Jock.
Sure, yeah.
All right, I'll start. I'm Bill Winfield, Grand County Commissioner, Chair of the Audit Committee.
John Cadler, Audit Committee member.
Brian Martinez, Audit Committee member.
Mark Tyner, County Administrator.
John Hatterley, External Auditor.
All right, and Karen?
Karen Curtin, Forbes Mazars, consultant to the Audit Committee.
All right, thank you, Karen, and thank you, everybody. So yes, Jock made the motion to approve the minutes from the 6/4 meeting.
I'll second that.
Seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. And so we can go on to review and discuss the external auditor's fiscal risk assessment of Grand County. And John, we will let you take that away when you're ready there.
Okay, I don't know if risk assessment is maybe the proper term. We'll let you know kind of how the audit went. Any concerns that we have where we're at right now. I'm just looking up which component units we're still waiting for.
Which are?
That's all right. I'm just,
That's the last I knew, there were 4 of them, and I believe TSSD was one of them. So if they've come in, there should just be 3, right?
So maybe while I'm pulling this up, I had a call from, so the 3 that we have are the cemetery maintenance, the water district, and transportation district.
Is that Quissa then?
Yep, Quissa. And I think all 3 of those are small enough that they don't have audits.
Quissa that small?
Quissa.
Quissa's pretty big.
Well, it's Grand County SS
Grand
Water
Water
District.
Sewer. Not Grand,
it's
not
a
Quissa.
component of Quissa.
Grand
It's the great, I got you.
County Water Special Services District.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you still need EMS,
EMS.
Grand County Solid Waste.
Yep.
Recreation.
Yep.
What about
Solid
Canyonlands
waste.
Health?
Hold
You
on.
have
It's done.
that.
It's done.
Okay.
Did I send you a copy of it?
Okay.
Mark,
Yes.
just go back on it. You just said solid waste.
Yeah, Grand County Solid Waste Special Service District.
But he didn't include
He did
that.
not include that. He
No.
said,
No, these are the ones we're missing.
That's what we were asking.
That's what we're
What are you
asking.
missing?
Yes.
The ones that Mark are going through right now are the ones we're still missing.
Yes.
Solid waste.
Yes, solid waste,
Recreation.
EMS, recreation, and you've got Thompson
Yep.
Special? Okay. So the 3, EMS, solid waste, and recreation.
And then the fire district, if you can get that, if they're done. So they're not a component unit, but we take their information and roll them into your government-wide statements.
And that's MVF,
Yeah.
Valley Fire.
Yes.
Okay.
So then what were the 3 that you were listing off, John? Like the cemetery and the,
So then the smaller SS Water District,
Right.
and then Grand County Transportation.
we need those or you don't need those?
No, I have those.
You have those.
And then we have Thompson's.
Okay.
Okay.
I think Steve pulled down Thompson.
So there's 4 you're still waiting on.
Yep.
Okay.
And they're the 4 that are more critical. They're the larger ones.
Okay.
When was the last time we reached out to those, Mark?
I've had some correspondence with several of those since then, but my last official email was May 29th.
Is it admin's responsibility to gather this up, or is this the clerk auditor's responsibility?
Well, it's kind of,
I'm
Yeah,
just wondering where the responsibility falls. Is it our responsibility?
ultimately, it's gonna fall probably to the commissioners. I mean, they're the governing body and they're the ones that have governance over them as well. I mean, otherwise they wouldn't be a component unit.
Right.
So however commissioners want to delegate that down.
I think it's easiest to work with the commission, whoever the commission liaison is to each particular board, to me is kind of the way to go, but.
And if you all don't mind, I will go ahead and follow up with those
Great.
units that we're
Yeah,
still
more
waiting on.
people bugging them. I know they're gonna get sick of you bugging them, but without people bugging them, it's just gonna slow down.
Well, I think that there's been some discussion about trying to get some legislation to change their date. I believe was that you and I that had that conversation, John?
And I actually talked to the state auditors just the other day. And this will kind of lead into that discussion, but I talked to him about component units, like, can you guys do legislation that dictates this? And he said, well, we don't really want to do that because then it's going to muddy the waters.
And he being
Seth.
okay.
But I just told him the concern. I said, look, we've had this conversation before, and I'm going to keep having this conversation with you because it's a problem. It's not just Grant County. I mean, he kept referring to you guys just because we were talking about Grant. I mean, that's why he called me to begin with. But I said, this is a problem with every county. I said, it's a problem with American Samoa. We wait for component units. And I said, what does the county have as far as leverage? And what can they do to get these component units to get done on time? And I said, my thought process is the county is a lot larger animal than these component units are. Why are the component units late? They should have their audits done 60 days after year end. There's no reason it's going 180 days. Part of it is the CPA's problem because the CPAs want to go through tax season and do tax season, and then they do government audits in the summer. And I don't blame them. I mean, our firm used to be that way. And we decided that wasn't a feasible option. And so, I mean, we do government audits all year round, but we started Canyon Lens in February. So,
Well, can't we build that into our RFP process somewhere? I mean, that component units are due by such a time, and then we've clearly got their budget. I know that EMS is constantly over here with their hand out to some degree. I think that it's time that we start flexing just a little bit here. This is crazy that we're having this battle every year. I mean, we had this last year, same conversation.
well, you can build it into the RFPs. The problem is, I mean, I get excited when I see something that's more than 180 or less than 180 days in an RFP. I mean, if they know when they want their audit done, you know, if they say we want it done by May 15th and present it at our meeting, then that gives us a deadline that I like because it's before the crash of June 30. The problem is those dates go and come and nobody says anything. Like, if it happens to not get done, then there's still no consequence. And then over time, that date doesn't mean anything. So I agree that that's where you need to start.
I think rather than what you're talking about right there is if we actually offered some sort of incentive to include the component units in the RFP here. So maybe we said, you know, Grand County Solid Waste, you know, Rec Special Service District, EMS, you know, Grand County is going to pay a portion of your audit services right there to go with our auditor. That way, that one auditor would make sure that those reports are all due on time because they're responsible for turning this in by June 30th.
What does a typical audit of these component units cost, John? Pick EMS, they're probably one of the bigger ones, them or Moab Valley.
Yeah, I haven't gone through their financial statements enough to know. I mean, Canyon Lands, I mean, we do theirs for 17,000.
Canyonlands Solid Waste,
No, the health district.
the health district.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, so it's probably 15 to 20,000.
I think I remember when I was on the rec board, I think that's definitely a smaller one. I thought it was maybe 5,000. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think solid waste, they're probably currently, I'm not sure what they're paying, but I would say it's probably between 6 and 10,
Yeah. Right.
which in my mind is, it's not enough. They're not spending enough time on an audit if you're only charging that much money. Because those fees, it's the number of hours that are gonna go into
Yeah.
actually working on that job.
So what you're proposing, Brian, is if we pull them all under the umbrella of county auditor, we throw them a.
Well, yeah, the same RFP, the
Right,
same
right, sure.
external auditor that we have,
And then-
I mean, that external auditor is gonna put pressure on each
Sure.
one of those districts. because
Throw them a
they're not-
bone by giving them, paying for some percentage of the audits of them.
Correct.
Does that cause any kind of conflict for you or for the external auditor, regardless of who it is?
How many of these districts do you guys audit anyway? I think you
Just Canyon Lands.
Is that it? That's the only one.
Yeah, as far as component units for the county. I mean, the problem is that they've paid that for a long, long time and it's never changed. And just think about how much costs have gone up over the last, since 2020.
Oh,
It's just
yeah, it's usually.
insane. And so, I don't know. I don't want to get in the middle because I'm not going to speak for other CPA firms. I mean, they can bid on jobs, whatever they want to bid. That's theirs, but.
So Mark, or could we direct admin to put a meeting together with us, with every one of these leaders of each one of these districts so that we can get this through?
Separate meetings, Bill, or
No, I think it should be one general.
haul them all in?
Yeah, pull them all in here and have a meeting, and because every year the county's
Yeah.
missing their deadline. And to me, it sounds like it isn't really the county's fault. Now, maybe a time or two it has been, but this is the exact same problem we had last year.
When do you want to try to do that meeting?
Well, I think it's in the future, it's regarded, we'll move on with this one, but I would say we give them a month to a month and a half, give some dates and put a meeting together. Because by next year, we have to have this resolved. And
what are we doing with this? Maybe we should talk about that for this RFP for the external auditor. We should probably do that before we approve the RFP for the external auditor.
And I see Karen shaking her head yes, but I'd love to hear you weigh in. Karen, thank you.
Yes. So I missed part of that dialogue. I'm sorry, the connection dropped and it took me a second to get it picked back up. But as I understand, you have 7 component units. 4 of them generally get audited. The only one that gets timely audited is the Canyon Lands, correct, Health Care Special Services District. And that's because it's done by the same auditor that does the county?
Correct.
Is that in a nutshell correct? Okay. So I agree with Brian. The RFP for the county auditor, for the county's external audit, if you want it to include the component units, that should all be included in one RFP, because the person or the firm that is doing that audit can pick up some efficiencies by doing, the entire job at one time rather than, kind of parceling it out. I think you'll pick up some efficiencies that way. I also agree with the comment from the auditor that price seems very low. And if it's been kept constant for a long time, I would question the amount of time they're putting into it for that price. It just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. And I think the fact that it's so late is a reflection of there's just not a lot of motivation on the auditor's part to get that done. So I also like Bill's idea about getting all of the management for those entities in a room together and, brainstorming, hey, how do we get this done quicker, more efficient, and how would they feel about having the county contracting for that audit? Do you know if that's something they would be receptive to at this point?
If we were paying a portion of their fees, I can't imagine that they would be resistant. Almost every one of them are subsidized in some form, their budgets from Grand County, so.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
If we're talking about this, clearly the prices that some of them are paying are gonna go up anyway. If we're saying that, I mean, I'm just guessing that a $5,000 contract probably doesn't give an auditor much motivation to get anything done early. I mean.
Yeah, I don't know if the delay is on the part of the auditee not being prepared or the auditor having other things on their schedule and this gets pushed behind. But those are all great topics of conversation that are generally best held in person versus back and forth with emails. And if you could get the whole group together at one time, I think that would be a very efficient way to address the issue.
And it would seem appropriate that it would be this board to have that meeting with these folks, so.
Yeah, and if I can make one recommendation is not to do an RFP, but do an RFQ. A request for qualifications rather than price. Because that's what happens is then they begin to bid shop and then they're trying to get the lowest price instead of the qualifications.
Does that in any way violate our policies here? I wonder, because that's not gonna be the lowest bid most likely if we go with an RFQ, and I totally agree with you. I prefer an RFQ even in the construction world because.
Well, that's why I'm trying to get
I think that falls within our purchasing.
Does it? Okay, perfect. I just didn't know, so. I definitely think that's good advice though, qualification. So anything else on that subject before we move on? Is there anything else
none on that for me.
on component units?
Hey.
Here's one of the folks that we're discussing actually right now. This is the director of the EMS.
Pretty ears burning, huh, Andy?
No, I was watching.
He zoomed in and here he is, so.
Yeah, I wanted to clarify a couple things, so.
Come up to the table so
Sure.
Ralph
Yeah,
and introduce yourself if you would.
Sure. Andy Smith, Grand County EMS. So we've never been late. Our organization has never been late.
Never been late.
So make sure that's clear. Current state law is June 30th. This is the first time the county has asked for them by the 15th.
Right.
So
I guess we're trying to establish, yes, we understand you have the same deadline we do.
Right.
But by your waiting until that deadline, you're causing the county to be late.
no, I understand that. But that's never been discussed to us. We didn't know that
No,
until recently.
And we're
So-
not beating up on you, we're just.
No, you guys were. It's okay though. So let me be super clear. We're working on it. I put a lot of pressure on our auditor to get it done on time. And he promised me by the 1st of June, and he is not done because he's missing some paperwork about a grant that we had to track down. So we will get it ASAP over to Mark so that you guys can have copies of it. I just wanted to clarify that. And I do think the law should change. I'm happy to help push that.
Is Gilbert doing your audit?
Yes,
Okay.
Gilbert Stewart.
We have a great relationship with them.
Yeah.
And I can work with, who's the partner on it? Is it Ben?
No, it's Spencer and
He was
Spencer Hinsey. Yeah, I grew up with him. Spencer and the other guy. Anyways, they're great.
Yeah.
Ron.
Yeah. And they're good. They're a good firm.
So I just wanted to clarify, because the way it's talking, it sounds like, well, these people are late every year. It's like, no, they're meeting state requirements. It's just late because it makes you guys late, which I understand is an issue.
Right.
I just wanted to clarify.
Right, we're not saying that you're late by the state law.
Yeah.
The
Get it?
fact that we have these component units that aren't getting to us in time is causing problems.
But then there have been times where some of the component units have been a couple of months late. I think last year we filed like in September.
Right. And I was aware of that, and my name got brought up in that discussion
But EMS
last year.
was late.
And I was like, that was not us. So I just wanted to clarify.
Okay, we appreciate that. We're
I have
not
to
in.
run and do something,
entering
but
the-
I had to come down here anyways. I'm like, I'm gonna stop in real quick and just make sure I'm
No,
clarifying.
that's great, yeah.
We're happy to participate in whatever regional RFP you guys want to do or something like that. We'd love to be part of that, and I won't ask you to pay for it.
Hey, do we have the right contact for Mark to get a hold of him?
Yeah, I have Mark's email.
Did you guys get back to him when he sent you out any emails?
On the 29th, I did, but I saw it.
Yeah, and
I think I got back to you when you first emailed me in
yes,
April.
on the
Yeah,
10th
April.
of April.
Okay.
And I sent that to you, Commissioner.
Yeah, so we'll take care of it.
All right, Andy, have a good one.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Sorry.
Andy.
I have to run that.
Appreciate you stopping in.
Thanks.
What are they waiting for? Like, 1 week that they have numbers, so we.
Yeah, and I don't think I was implying that any of them are missing the state statute deadline. When which caused him to come running down here. The issue is that it's causing the county to be late, and we have to move their deadline, even if it's us setting a deadline for them.
I agree.
Okay, the next kind of hiccup that we just had was a call from state auditor. So I don't know why he waited until the middle of June to tell us that he specifically wants us to test the TRT.
To test it,
Yeah. So typically, we have not been required to test how you're allocating and spending the TRT tax. Our audits, where we have the significant risk of revenue recognition, that's what we care about, is that you're recognizing that you're getting that money and you're reporting it accurately. And as you guys know, it's not very cut and dried in code anyways. And so we've always argued with the state auditor that it's not fair for me to put my staff in a position to say whether or not, if you spend money on, let's say, a bumper sticker, whether that goes in promotion or in what category, or, it could fall
It's
into
your
a
job
number.
to interpret
It's
code.
reasonable to say that it could fall into multiple things. So that's kind of what we said. But he called me the other day and he said, just FYI, we expect you to test this and we're gonna be making sure that you do this. So we're working with Gabe right now. Apparently this is news to me as well. The state wants you to file a TRT report. I don't even think they've issued the format yet, because I told them, I said,
that came out of HB 456.
Yeah. and so I'm like, okay, so now you're taking something that just changed in code this year that superseded everything else, that doesn't take effect until July, but now you want me to retroactively go test 2024 under the same conditions. Well, you can use the old code, but we want a report. Okay, what does the report look like? Because I haven't seen it. Well, it's still in draft form. I'm like,
So give
the
us
audit's
the
due like in
draft
2
form.
weeks, right? So you want, and he's like, well, I expect it in the financial statements. I'm like, it's got to be supplementary information, and the county has to choose whether or not they want to put it in there or not. It's not a regular statement. So, and he's like, well, I guess I don't care if the county chooses to put in the financial statements or if they just want to submit it. But he said it has to tie back to the financial statements. So I need to talk to Gabe and make sure that he's aware. I don't know what format they want it in. I haven't seen a format,
I haven't seen it.
which is a little frustrating to me.
I know that from the code there, it's listed as a breakdown of promotional expenditures.
Yeah,
So that's how it's listed.
that's what they're concerned about, is the promotional side. That's what he told me yesterday.
That's how it's listed in the bill right now.
So we're gonna get a breakdown of all of the expenditures from Gabe and Steve. And just make sure that what's being coded as promotion is actually promotion. I think that the state auditor, their biggest concern was the trail administrators, trail ambassadors, is that what he called them?
Yeah, that's it.
So I think that that's the only thing that he's looking at, to be honest.
Right.
So
That makes sense.
I'm like, all right, we'll do what you want us to. I'm like, I'm a little frustrated that it's almost the end of June and you're dropping a bomb on us, like,
Welcome to our world.
because now we have to come back to the county and say, well, sorry, Gabe and Steve, you thought you gave us everything, but now we're requesting more information. And I mean, we should have been wrapping this up instead of requesting more information at this point. But we'll work through it. I know Steve my Steve that works with me is working with Gabe and Steve here. I know there were a bunch of emails. I hope Mark was copied on all the emails going back and forth the last couple of days. There were a lot of adjustments so what we're doing, rather than at the very end, when everything's done, Steve's trying to be proactive, so he pulled another trial balance from Gabe and Steve and compared it to what we had, and there were some small differences, totally immaterial. But when we made those adjustments, it threw the trial balance out of balance, which we couldn't figure out why. We looked at all the entries that were made on your end, Squire's end, and our end. And ultimately, I think it was a Cassell issue from period 13 of last year or something like that. There was an error being thrown. I don't know how we got a clean trial balance to begin with, but we did. I mean,
What was that? What you said? Clean what?
trial balance. So trial balance is basically your financial statements in basically one big column
Okay.
of all the balances. And that's how we import it into our system.
Got it.
So Steve told me this morning they got it worked out and everything balances now. So he got that back to Steve. That's all Steve was waiting for, to put the actual statements together. Raymond James, we're trying to get some disclosure information from them. There's a lot of investment disclosures under GASB 62 that we need to have. So a lot of it's a breakdown of your investments in what types of investments, whether it's corporate, government bonds, that type of thing, and then the ratings of those investments. Zions and Morton usually have that. They have that information all laid out in a document. But Raymond James, we're trying to see how they have that information. So that's the last piece of the counties and I know that they have a draft of the financial statements. It's probably a pretty ugly draft just because it hasn't been formatted and everything yet, but that's what we need to have the county's complete set of financials minus the component units. So you guys should have that this week, probably today.
So
if we get the Raymond James stuff.
back to the request from Seth to test the TRT. We had a discussion with Gabe and we were considering bringing on, is it Squires, to help him get through, because we're trying to dig through some of that ourselves. I mean, we're aware that our budget is, well, I guess we would say we're over budgeted for the amount of income that's come into the county. And then we need to go back and provide a metric and go through and look at all of those. So is that what you're gonna do now to satisfy Seth, or is that
No,
something?
all we're doing is looking at the expenditures to make sure that whatever falls under promotion is allowable costs under promotion.
That's exactly what we're talking about.
So, yeah, if that's what you're talking about, then, I mean, we're probably just gonna pick a sample. I'm not gonna go through every little transaction that goes through there. It's inefficiency at this point in the audit that's what we do anyways, just pick a sample. I mean, that's how we audit. So, I mean, if you wanna get down into the nitty gritty details where you're looking at every single transaction, then, I mean, that's really gonna be outside of our scope, but
Okay. Yeah.
it's not that we can't do it, it's just within like what we need to have done for the audit and to appease the state auditors to be cost effective for you guys. We're gonna do it by sample size, not individual transactions. And mostly we're just looking to make sure that like whatever they say is unallowable is not still being counted. I mean, I think at this point it's kind of, from what Seth said, it's kind of under their purview of what they deem reasonable and allowable. So
then what does that do to your timeline?
shouldn't do much. I mean, we should still have everything done. It's just getting that report created and making sure that our presentation in the financial statements is similar to what you're presenting in the report. If we have to like add lines or change balance, like separate balances so that Seth can look at your report and easily find it on the financial statements. Because our groupings might be different than the way, like you're gonna show a lot of detail. And we're gonna show, in your funds, we're gonna show functional expenses that don't break it down into like individual groups of transactions.
Sean, question for you. Do we have, I think this is the question, do we have time to adjust our financials?
Yeah.
Now, before this happens and there's a finding on us?
No, I'm not gonna give you a finding for this.
There wouldn't be a finding for
Changing the financials?
no, not for changing the financials, but if the finances are left as is, and then you run into, and you run into problems where there's problems on the TRT. Would your audit include a finding then?
Yeah. So it's not the financial statements.
Yeah.
It's if we find out that like there's things that the state auditor deems unallowable being cost or allocated to promotion, then it's going to be a finding from the state auditor. We will include it in our report, but that's where it's going to come from. I mean, that's what Seth told me, that when I got done testing, I had to call him before we did anything with.
So just let me get this straight then. So you will do your research.
Yep.
That research will go to the state auditor, and if we receive a finding, it will come from the state auditor.
Well, it'll show up in our finding. It'll show up in our report.
It'll show up in your report.
Yeah.
And that's due June 30th?
Yeah. So, I mean, Seth, I think Seth knows the position he's putting us in, because he kept telling me, he's like, well, I don't want you to get in the middle. I'm like, you're putting me in the middle.
Right.
I mean, I'm the external auditor, and you dropped this on us right when we're finalizing stuff from things that went into code into 2025. I don't know what you want, but I don't know what you want me to do, Seth. And he said, well, if you find a problem, then you reach out to us before you get the finding. Then anyway. I think
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a quick question? These TRT funds, are they running through the general fund, or what fund are they expended in?
There's multiple restricted funds, I
Fund
guess.
23.
23, 16, and what's the mitigation one?
47 is, 23 is all TRT.
Yeah.
So it really actually should only be 23, but I think back in 2024, you had Fund 23 and Fund 16. Is that correct?
But then there's the mitigation fund too, right?
That's all,
That's
it's
TRT.
all under Fund 23, but then there's also some of that fund in Fund 47 as well.
Yeah, because I know that we split it so they could be
Yeah.
easily seen.
So I don't have access to the numbers versus the name. I'm looking at the financial statements. I see there's a special revenue fund called TRT mitigation. That
Yeah.
sounds like, which fund number is that?
23, let me pull it up here.
I want to say that's
Okay.
40. That's 40, isn't it? 40.
So I
23,
guess
believe, is promotion.
So what are the names of the funds where these are running through? Or maybe we don't know that.
One's called economic development.
No, we quit using that.
Oh, you did? Okay. So you need to tell
was
Steve
16.
what that needs to be.
That's
Because
what-
that was the 16 and 23, I think, is listed as economic development.
Yeah, when we quit using 16 2 years ago. Is that right, Bill?
I don't think it's been that long.
Summer of 23 is when they disallowed it, so in the
Oh, yeah.
24, it should have gone back to 23.
Sounds right.
So for the 24 financial, it should be 23.
Right.
Is my
Okay.
understanding.
I'm looking at the 23 financials, and you know, I guess it sounds, is it correct that they're sort of spread out in different funds? That's why,
They are.
Yes.
Yeah.
okay. And the expenditures are, you know, something along the lines of public health, community. Those are the ones that I'm seeing on the governmental funds expenditure, but I guess you further break that down in your GL, and that's why they're going to be in promotion or these different categories of TRT.
Yeah, so that's what I was saying is, so on the financial statements, they have to be presented by function.
Yeah,
Whereas I think the TRT report is going to be broken down by either, it's going to be promotion and mitigation, but then within promotion and mitigation, what are those subcategories? And so that's what we have to tie somehow to the financial statements. So we may need to
Fund 26 is
determine
TRT
some more
mitigation.
functions. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, well, it sounds like, I mean, you wouldn't change the financial statements, right? You'd leave them in these functional expenditures and then had this separate TRT report that is just gonna sum up in time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think there's other things in 16 and
It's 26.
23 that are not TRT, right?
Sorry, say that again.
There's other expenditures in 16 and 23 that are not TRT, right? It's not 100% TRT in there.
16 is 100%
Is that
TRT.
100%?
And then 26 is your mitigation fund right there. So those are the two funds. However, we moved it from 24 and 25 from Fund 16 and changed it over to Fund 23.
So Fund 16 was created when there was economic diversification carve out from TRT so the state allowed some use of TRT for the diversification funds. That's when we created Fund 16. When the state disallowed that on July 1st, 2023, we deprecated use of Fund 16 and went back to Fund 23.
And I take back what I just said. There are funds inside there that are not promotional and that's the rural county grant. Because we did, what Quinn was just talking about, we had combined our economic development, which had that rural county grant in there, which was 200,000. So there was some.
Yeah, there's
There was some non-TRT.
16 has activity this year. Is that your?
No, 16 should not. We just haven't amended our budget yet from looking on the state auditor.
If I'm looking at the details.
I have to look with you.
Yeah, there should be some kind of a roadmap, right, to get from the financial statements to that TRT. It sounds like they're distributed among different funds in the financials.
Community, yeah.
Rural county
Yeah,
grant,
so that's what we just need to figure out is how we're gonna present and then tie it to that report.
Yeah.
Yeah, 23, if you look at 23 for 2025, 23 has all of your, basically your promotional expenses.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's transactional activity in 16 still. It's just not TRT stuff.
Correct.
Yeah, because this has got, well, TRT tourism promotion, the revenue came in 16. Plus the rural county grant. But they're combined on the financial statements. They're in one fund on the financials anyway, so. So that's kind of where we're at as far as the county audit goes. Let me look and see if.
That's
But I don't see that as delaying the audit.
Okay.
Past the 30th, like we can get that done. I can communicate with Seth and get that done in the next couple of weeks.
That would be contingent upon those component units getting you their financials.
Yes, yep. So this is not including any of the component unit discussion. This is just the county side.
And so if any of the component units don't get you their information, then you won't be able to complete hours on time.
So here's the options that the county has. If we get all the component units, we issue on time, they all have unmodified opinions, your opinion is an unmodified opinion, then we finalize everything and get it done. That's perfect world, right? That's if everything goes good, we get all the component units, then we're good to go. If we do not get component units and they're significant, so that would be solid waste, EMS. Sounds like we will have EMS, but what was the other one? The
Recreation and
Recreation.
then Moab Valley
Fire district.
So the fire district, that's not gonna affect your opinion, because those balances are not material. But those three component units, because they're the three largest component units, then your discrete component unit opinion is, if we don't have one of those, is gonna be a modified opinion or a qualified opinion, because we don't have enough information to say, yeah, these balances are correct, we're missing a substantial portion. So second option is, this is if we don't have component units, we can complete the audit with a qualified opinion. And then if, when you get the component units, if it's 2-3 months down the road, then you want to reissue, we'll basically reincorporate everything in, reissue our reports, and hopefully everything's unmodified before September 30th, because September 30th is when you have to submit your single audit. I don't like that. I've done it once before, and actually submitted it to the federal government that way with a modified opinion. But then when you resubmit it to the federal government, it's hard to resubmit now anyways, the way their submission system is. They just changed it a year and a half ago. And so we actually have to get a hold of somebody there, tell them to basically open that back up, that we can resubmit an audit, and then we resubmit it. It just doesn't look good if you're submitting qualified audits. It doesn't look good on the county.
What is the difference between a qualified and unqualified opinion?
A non-qualified is clean opinion. Qualified means that there's something in the financial statements that is a material misstatement that we couldn't get over. Like, we don't have the information, we don't know what the balances are, so they're not materially correct. And so if you want to look at it as good versus bad, I mean, there's good, bad, and worse. There's unqualified or unmodified. There's qualified or modified, and then there's adverse, which, I mean, or a disclaimer. I mean, those are the 4 opinions you can get, but you don't ever want to have an adverse or a disclaimer. That just means that your books are in such bad shape that we can't even tell heads or tails. So really, you're looking between qualified and unqualified. And then the last option is to wait a couple weeks. And I told Seth, hey, we don't have component units yet. This is why I'm having this conversation with you. But you're not the only county that's going to be a couple weeks late if we wait for component units. I just don't want it to be August or September, because it makes it a lot harder for us to get things done in August or September, because then we have all of the junior ends that are screaming at us to get on site for their stuff. And so it just gets into the really busy.
John, what's the practical effect of a qualified versus an unqualified opinion?
Your ratings. I mean, if you're worried about ratings, external creditors, they're going to look at that. State auditor is going to look at that. The federal government's going to look at that. I mean, it could affect your grants. It could affect.
No, that's great.
State. You just, qualified means that there are problems. Right. There's usually material weaknesses. There's usually several significant efficiencies.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the auditors will choose to give we're going to choose whether to give a qualified or unqualified opinion anyways. But in some cases where we've taken over audits, the prior auditors have just always chosen to give a qualified audit. Mm-hmm. They just know going into it, they're just going to qualify the audit.
It's like a teacher.
Because they don't want to put the time in to really dig into figuring out what the problems are and help you guys get better.
Got it.
And that's a frustration to me. So anytime that we can get past the qualified audit, that needs to happen. Even if you end up, even if it
takes a little bit of time,
even if it ends up giving, material weakness finding, but we can at least get a clean opinion. Like, you can deal with the material weakness finding, right? You just don't want to have bad opinions on your reports.
Right. Okay, thank you.
You received the trial balances from the 3 entities that are not audited
Yes, I have those.
from the other component units? Okay, so that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, because, so what we have to do is we have to get their, in Utah, they have, if they don't receive an audit, they have to fill out a financial survey.
Mhm.
That basically, it's kind of like an Excel version of their financials, but it's only a balance sheet and an income statement. But we have to know what those balances are because we have to calculate whether or not they're significant to the component units in total.
So that'd be for really small company units.
Yeah, like Thompson.
Right.
So you're basically short 3 audits at this point.
Yes.
And the Moab Valley Fire.
I just got a question, something that just, so we had a state audit last year. Why were we not auditing the TRT this year? I mean,
So
why did that?
under code-
It just seemed like we just had an audit right here, we had problems. I would figure that our external auditor would go ahead and look into that.
So the reason why is because under code, that's under their direction. They're the ones that are supposed to audit TRT.
So that's not under your
Part of our external audit. I don't specifically look at anything related to Utah code unless it's in their compliance guide. I mean, we make sure that you're following all of your grant requirements and things like that. But as far as how you spend your money, then I care more that you're actually, there's records that you have the documentation that you're actually spending the money, that it's not going to the wrong places, that you're not committing fraud, that there's no waste and abuse. But whether or not it's TRT tax being spent between promotion and mitigation and how you determine that is not a high risk for me.
Or is that because
For your financial statements, because your financial statements are materially correct. All the revenues in there, all the expenditures,
Yeah.
that's what we're focusing on. So under code, it's the state auditor that is the one who's responsible for making sure that the TRT is being spent the right way. And that's the argument that I've had with Seth, because that's what he asked us. He's like, well, why are you not? I'm like, why would I test this, Seth? I test the revenue because I want to make sure that you're not overstating revenue.
Right.
And that you're reporting what you should be. I was like, I could care less how you spend TRT money, if it's mitigation or promotion. That restricted money is being spent for those types of purposes. And until you clarify the code that gives more direction to the counties on what you think is allowable versus, or maybe not them, but clarify what constitutes what, because it's hard for me to put my staff in a position where we're determining whether or not an expenditure of salaries can be called promotion or mitigation, right? We're not TRT people, right?
No, I got that,
So
I think my question was, so you did not take the findings that came from the state auditor and use that in your audit?
we dealt with that last year. All those findings were rolled into last year's audit. That's one of the reasons why I was late.
So you took the findings and rolled those into last year's, but you didn't then apply those same standards to this year?
Anything last year was adjusting balances on what they determined was not allowable.
Correct, but then you don't check to make sure that that same process is being followed in the following year?
It was.
It wasn't,
Like, as
that's
far
why,
as-
that's why I'm asking.
Well,
Yeah.
but now you're getting down into the weeds of whether or not, what Seth is asking us to do now is look at specific expenditures to see if they're.
And that was
like-
part of the previous year when you guys said.
But see, none of that was disclosed to me until last week. I had no idea that he cared about the trail ambassador until yesterday when he sent me an email, and I can show you the email.
Yeah.
So all of that was like, if I was to even go look at it, which, I mean, we did, we tied out the TRT, that's all in our test work.
Mhm.
But if you were to go look for what his concern is that the trail ambassador is being paid with promotion versus mitigation, that's not gonna be in my test work, because I had no idea that was even a concern of the state auditors.
But that was what you said you did the year previous, right?
No, the year before is when they wanted you guys to adjust balances for fund balances for things that they said were not allowable, but we were never privy to any of that information.
Got it. That's what I was
Yeah.
asking. Were you
Yeah.
guys involved with those fund balance transfers? I thought that's what you said. That's why the audit was
No.
late last time, is you were.
Well, we were
involved with that.
waiting for the state auditor to tell us, or to tell you guys, this is what we are making you do. And then Gabe, we worked with Gabe and he, like, this is what the state auditor is making us do. This is what we have to adjust. This is why. But we were never privy to like specific what they were disallowing or why they were disallowing it.
So you guys never actually went through the audit findings that came from the state?
I got the letter, but none of that was outlined in any of the letters given to us. Is what I'm saying.
I've got a question, and I'm not trying to put you on a hot seat or anything, John, but we had an audit with findings from the state.
Mm-hmm.
Where does the county go if it isn't the external auditor the next year to make sure that we aren't again in the same position we were that we found ourselves that the state auditor came in? And if it isn't the external auditor, where do we go to make sure year to year that we're following the statute that we should be following?
I agree, but I think that it's kind of the same question, I think,
Right,
that's being asked, just being asked a little bit different way. In a normal situation, if they come in and say, look, we've identified this issue and that you need to change this going forward, I just think that the TRT, what was expressed in the letter, I wasn't in all of the conversations. All I saw was a summary of these are the things that we're going to make the county change. Right. And so it was moving fund balance from one fund to another fund or repaying.
Yep.
But we were never told, and this is the same discussion that I had with the state auditor, was if you guys find that this is a concern, you tell me how my audit team or me as an auditor, I can go to the code and determine that same thing based on, because the county has a different opinion than the state auditor.
Sure.
So you're talking about opinion, you're talking about, I shouldn't use the word opinion because that's kind of a sacred word to us, but
Yeah.
You're talking about perceptions of two different entities. Your office is saying that you're allowing these expenses or you're not allowing these expenses, and the county's saying that they feel like they should allow these expenses and maybe not these expenses. And I said, you're talking about perceptions. This is nowhere defined in code. And so for me as an external auditor, how do I go to code and say how you're spending the money is, I'm not the state auditor, right? I cannot get inside Seth's head to say, okay, like, unless you come down and look at all the expenses, I'm not going to have the same understanding of what you think is allowable or unallowable,
right,
versus what the county does. I'm going to side with the county more than I am the state auditor, probably, because you know and understand the county better on what is promotion, what is, and you have justified reasons why you're spending it under promotion or mitigation.
Gotcha.
And for me, if I can have reasonable, plausible explanations given to me on how you're spending the money, that it's not being absolutely misspent. I mean, if you're talking about promotion or mitigation and you say, well, we're going to go spend it on, I mean, mitigation is so wide open that you can pretty much spend it on anything. You spend it on roads, right? But, you know, if promotion, if there's things in there that may be one side or the other, then I'm going to take your explanation and say, well, I think that that's reasonable. I understand the explanation, but the state auditor can come back and say, no, we disagree. We disagree with the way they're spending the money based on our understanding and our perception.
But back to my question, Jacques has an opinion.
Right.
Brian has an opinion. I have an opinion. The state auditor came down with a finding, and you're saying that you're going to side with the county. So then where does the public have the assurance that what we're doing is proper? Where is the protection or the safety net? Because every one of us could spend this in a different way.
And you're right. I mean, we're going to make sure that it still falls under proper guidelines, but
that's where my question is right there, right? county had to pay back a certain amount of funds that you were privy to, right? And then the counties in their books did the same exact thing the following year. That's where I'm getting at. Like, we said like in the audit, okay, we agree with your audit findings, right? We're gonna give you back, we're gonna pay this money back over here, back over into this account. And yet the system never changed and the external auditor never caught that. And that's where I'm trying to figure out where we look at who's supposed to be catching these mistakes. I mean, is the commission supposed to go through every single line and check to make sure? Is that where the responsibility lies at right there?
I guess maybe I'm under the wrong impression, but I don't know that the process continued through 2024.
Yeah, 2024, it's still set up in 2025.
Well, you can keep it set up the same way. It was the disallowance of costs that you had to move fund balance from one fund to the other. So you had
Correct,
to
and
move
then we moved the balance, but then following year, we just spent the money the same way.
I guess maybe you are privy to information that I'm not privy to, because
Wait, well, we're not,
my understanding there was a change, and from what we're seeing that there was a change, right? So it was the payments to, I'd have to pull up the state auditor letter. But what I'm saying is, like, just yesterday, I
And I
mean,
can sit down and go
nobody
through it with
talked
you.
about in any of the findings or any of the expenditures or anything, payments to the trail ambassador, right? Until yesterday. That's the first time I've ever heard that terminology and why it's disallowed. And that's the only thing that they're concerned with.
Well, so maybe I can help explain it rather than get adversarial over this, right?
Sure, I'm not,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand
Yeah,
because.
yeah. So, you had in 21 and 22, they repaid back $182,000 for trail ambassador salaries, right?
Mhm.
That were paid out of the rec, film, and convention fund. Okay? That process continued through 23. That process continued through 24. And that process is still in place right now in 2025. Right? So we admitted that there was a problem. We made a transfer, right? Admitting that, this is how we're going to do it. And then we continued to do the same thing in 23. We continued to do the same thing in 24.
Okay,
And
so
we're now in 2025. I think that's where I'm wondering,
So-
is this your responsibility to be catching this? Or is this, where does the responsibility lie at?
I think that's where it comes down to whether or not the state auditor, so I was never made aware of why they were making you repay from funds from year to year to year to year, right?
Okay.
All we knew was the state auditor said, we've looked at some of their expenditures. We disallowed some of their expenditures. I didn't know they just said, we're recategorizing it from promotion mitigation, but they can't spend it under promotion. But we were never made aware of what specifically those expenditures were. So for us to go say year to year to year, that's where I'm saying, as far as the expenditures go, in the financial statement opinion, all the revenues accounted for, all the expenditures are accounted for. Under code, the state auditor is supposed to look at TRT, right? And if they want to give us a list of what's allowable and what's not allowable, that's more specific than what's in code, then we can go say, oh, look, we see these expenditures and they are disallowed under the state auditor guidance.
I mean,
But
but
right now, we have nothing really.
I would
They
think
don't
that
give us anything either, John.
But I would think that audit letter right there would be something that they've.
But there was no specifics to us. There was no what's allowable, what's disallowed. And I've even told Seth, I'm like, look, Seth, what do you want us to do? Because this is a matter of perception.
For sure.
Well, no, it was in finding number 3. I mean, they listed it right out there.
Not the trail ambassador, and that's what he's concerned about right now.
That's exactly what they listed out in finding number 3 in the audit. Right? Finding number 3 was trail ambassador salaries are not an allowable use of TRT, film, rec, and convention. That was listed inside there. Right? And then finding 4 was the economic development was not an allowable use of TRT.
Yeah, but that had to do with the billing, right?
Right, the rec, film, and convention part was much less clear than Brian's making it out to be.
Yeah.
And then that was the crux of why we're still in that, is because we had, none of us caught that last year. I mean, we all did the budget here last year and it wasn't caught per se.
Yeah. So
it was questioned.
I agree with you. So if it was specifically in there, then like,
Look back at it. I mean,
that's why we're testing it.
It's a
And like, if-
Yeah,
that's
I'm
why
trying-
it's kind of a news to me, but like,
it's a matter of interpretation also.
we'll get the testing done. But I agree with you. Like if.
I mean, John,
if there's
I just disagree with you. I don't think that it can be a matter of
We've had this
interpretation.
conversation so many
I know,
times.
but this is not a matter of
All
interpretation.
right.
You agreed to a finding, right? It said it right there in the finding. You paid back the money and you made no changes. How can that not be?
The interpretation was whether it was the 80% promotion or the 20% rec film convention.
But you made no changes. It was always rec film and convention. It was never
That
promotion. It
was
was always a rec film and convention.
very
Made
unclear.
no changes
All right.
in the account.
Let's go have a beer and talk about it.
Yeah, so.
Gentlemen, I'm
so-
sorry. I'm sorry. I need to jump on another call. I apologize for having to leave in the middle of this. It obviously is a point that needs to be further evaluated. But
Thanks, Karen.
I'd be happy to
Appreciate
jump
your
on, join you at another call if you'd like to do anything later this afternoon or at your convenience. I apologize. I just have another call I'm committed to at 11.
All right, thank you, Karen.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So, and let me say, like, after that, the issues last year, when everything got filed, when I talked to the state auditor, they were satisfied. So for us, it was like, okay, well, if you're good with the way things are being done, then let's move forward, right?
And we went through our budget and we thought they were satisfied too because they gave us our money back, basically. They turned the taps back on and that seemed like it did it. And that was after the conversation about the budget and how we were spending money. So we went forward assuming that we were in the clear.
Right. So as far as like the expenditures, what my understanding was they had looked at previous years and they were looking at what was going to be spent and they were satisfied. And I didn't hear anything about it until yesterday. So,
Like, John, I
This goes
think
back
from my perspective, we continued paying for salaries out of restricted funds that were part of the finding three that Brian's mentioned. And we want to get, regardless of whose opinion's right or wrong here, we want to get to where we're done, the state auditor signs off, and we are moving forward with our books being handled correctly. I don't care where the blame gets put, that isn't the issue.
and you can blame me. I'm
not blaming you.
But I'm saying like it's good for.
No, I'm not blaming John. I want help getting us past this TRT issue. I
agree.
I want Seth to say, thank you, Grand County, thank you, Larson's. This is the way we want your books moving forward. That's all I'm after. And I'm not trying to blame anybody here. I just want to get over this hump.
Yeah.
I want to pay back money if we need to pay it back. And I want to change the accounting with Gabe so that he understands and we have this going according to what the state auditor and the statute requires, and we're done.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not done. Clearly, we'll have our books and we'll have it audited again in the future, but I'm not trying to assess any blame.
No,
I'm not trying to blame the past. I just want to get past this in whatever method we need to, and that's why we brought up using Squires to help Gabe if we've got to break through and go through those. If some of that can be done by Larson's, I want to utilize the Larson's for that and come to a point where we know Seth is happy, you're happy, and we can move on.
My concern is whether you use us or Squire or Gilbert or whoever, is it's never going to be resolved because as external auditors, the code is pretty vague on defining promotion and mitigation, right?
But it changed
I
considerably.
mean, if I see trail ambassador, I have no idea what like exactly his role is. I could see how that could be a part of promotion or mitigation. So until the state auditor defines more specifically what falls under which categories.
HB 456.
To me, it feels like the information that I continue to get it's a moving target.
Right.
And
Said
so
that
for
many
us,
times.
it's for, if I was to go test the federal audit, and if it was an aviation audit or COVID money or ARPA, I have very clearly defined what's allowed and what's not allowed. And it's black and white, right? Because we live in a black and white world.
No, I understand that.
And it's hard for us. And if I talk to Matt at Squire, if I talk to Ben at Gilbert, like, I mean, I have a great relationship with these guys. They're going to say the exact same thing, that it's so convoluted as to what's allowed and not allowed under TRT. What certain expenditures might fall under both categories, or why do they feel like one falls under one and doesn't fall under the other? And that's where I guess I need clarified guidance.
Well, I know that.
Even going reading the new code, I mean, they were supposed to clarify it under the new code, but the new code is
clarified it
just as
somewhat,
ambiguous as the old code was. They just redefined percentages.
Some of the definitions are actually.
The definitions are a lot clearer, and
They
they
are.
make it very clear that if it's promotion,
But I
It's
couldn't agree
separate
more.
from
The old one is
mitigation.
extremely open to interpretation.
So, and this is the conversation that I had with Seth yesterday,
Yeah.
was, Seth, how do you want me to determine whether or not it's,
okay, so in our conversation with Gabe yesterday, it was decided that we would put together a meeting with the state auditor.
yeah, and
And
I would
so-
love to be a part of that meeting.
My exact comments were gonna be is then I believe that it's important that you're there as a representative so that we can get to the bottom of this with the state auditor.
Yeah.
That sounds.
It needs to be statute, not opinion.
Yeah.
On every one of these decisions, and that's where we have to get so that we aren't from one political body to another changing the opinion of what's allowed.
I 100% agree. And I think that's where this conversation is going, is that for all of our intents and purposes, there was the blessing by the state auditor.
Right.
After everything was all said and done.
There's an
And
implicit
so
blessing.
the expenditures,
Right.
we're looking at, okay, we can see
I don't-
all the accounted
I didn't
expenditures.
read it as a blessing. I read it
No, the
as.
conversations that I had with the state auditor.
Right.
After they had issued their findings,
There was an
then it was, if they
expectation.
do these things, we're good, is
Right.
what was expressed to me. So to me, that's, if you address those findings, which the letter's going back and forth and said, okay, I'm satisfied.
Okay, that, to me, that's their letter was, and when they released the money, was, okay, Grand County, you can come out of the corner now where I've had you put because you've been playing bad. But there's also an expectation moving forward that you're gonna play by the rules. So there was a yes, okay, we're gonna release your money. We're fine, you've made these concessions, but moving forward, this is the box you get to play in.
Yeah.
And we find ourselves, whether it is by a mistake or not, outside of that box. And we want to get back in the box. I think everybody
Yeah.
does, even if the opinion differs on what the parameters of the box are. We want to move forward in compliance with the state auditor.
I agree.
And
So
I
and
honestly,
I'm gonna take that responsibility on myself too, because I need to have a conversation with the state auditor to,
well, and I think
clarify.
it needs to be with us as well.
yeah.
And I'm totally fine. I think that it would be good to have admin set that up with all of our schedules.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, I hate Zoom.
Yeah, I do too. That's why
I
I'm here.
I either wanna go to the state auditor's office or I want Seth to come to here, whichever is.
Yeah.
I wanna be in a room so that we can have this conversation. It's very tough. I mean, even Karen struggles.
Right.
You
No,
know,
It is.
100% agree.
And I don't mind coming down either. So,
and maybe it's that we go up there, but that's something that we move this forward.
Well, Seth, I think is in Cedar, right?
Oh,
I think
Yeah.
he's in Cedar City. I don't
Yeah,
think
but-
he's in Salt Lake.
yeah, but he does have an office up the Capitol. So I don't care what.
I don't
it
care
is.
either.
Yeah, doesn't matter. Okay, so Mark, we have that one.
Yes.
We'll
We
work
can do it
with-
in my office if he wants to split it halfway.
Yeah,
Just to be clear on that, is it Bill, Gabe, John, Mark, and Seth?
Bill, Gabe, John, Mark, and Seth, at a minimum.
Right. No, that's fine. I
Yes.
think that's appropriate.
Yeah, at a minimum. We have to have some,
Even
and so that's the second meeting, right, Mark? I don't mean to keep you, because we have the other one that we're gonna do with the directors.
Yes.
Up for the component units.
Yes.
And what is the title of what you're waiting for from Moab Valley Fire? Because I've been putting an email together.
Oh, just tell them we just need their financial statement.
Just their financial
statement audit.
statements? The financial statement audit?
Yep.
Okay, all right.
I mean, that'll be their final financial statements. Even if they have numbers that they give to their auditors and if they're not quite done, like that's one that if their auditors can give us basically the numbers that are gonna go into the financial statements, I don't actually need their whole financial statement. I just need to know that there's not gonna be any changes to the numbers. Do you know who is Spew and their auditor?
I don't know who is, but I just worked extensively with Moab Valley Fire, so I've got a relationship with them when we expanded their boundaries, and I thought I'd send off an email and see if I could.
Bill, just getting back to this meeting, does this meeting that you guys are having kind of go against what the conversation was with Stephen Stocks and Tina Cannon? I mean, she basically said, I think during that meeting, she didn't want to hold our hand anymore, right? Like
She also
there's-
didn't give us a clear idea of what.
I mean, there's a clear idea. I mean, it's either promotion or it's not promotion, right? Like that's the whole thing. And trying to take this daisy chain and saying that it could be this, and if it's this, it's this, it's that, it's this. I mean, here, I'll give you a good example, Jacques, right? So let's talk about, so if I go out to lunch with you, right, we have that beer that we're talking about, okay? We go out to lunch, I have that, we have that, I could write that off as an expense, right? As a business meeting, that could be expense, right? Well, I could say the same thing in the morning, right? Well, hey, I need to eat food so that I can go run my company, right? And can I write that off as an expense?
Depends on if you're at work or not.
No, if I'm not at work, but yeah, I'm at home, but I need to eat food so I can be strong, so I can run my company. Is that too far out right there?
Yeah.
Exactly, and that's exactly what we're doing with this
Yeah,
right
this
here.
stuff is
We're
way more
saying that,
nuanced
we're saying that, you know, it's not the primary intent, and that's what the whole point of
We're
it
not
is.
getting anywhere having this conversation again. I mean,
Well, I mean, we might as well,
Right
because
now,
we're right here.
let's,
Well, I do
I'm
know that it
trying
would
to
have,
kind of come up with some. kind
so
of
let's
standard
get
right
Stephen on the meeting too. I think that'd be.
Well, I
totally
just feel
appropriate.
like, I don't know, and this is where I would
here.
like
Where
to
the
be in the
primary intent
meeting.
lies at.
With Seth, because I feel like I can ask the questions, because I do feel like there's a lot of hair splitting, right? On what falls under what, right? It's getting down to where it's like, I mean, it could be one or the other.
Sure.
And we're getting down to the nuts and bolts. I just want a clear definition of, okay, you define for me out of all of the potential expenditures, because as I understand it, mitigation is so wide open that it's pretty much you can spend the money on a number of things that
Brian's breakfast.
normally I would say.
mitigation side hasn't
not-
been
it's-
what their
it's the
concern is.
promotion.
No, I get that, but what I'm saying is like, normally, you know, if I come in and if it's a, you know, the transient room tax and I see a whole bunch of road expenditures, that looks odd to me, but then I go read the code and say, well, they can spend roads, you know, and so,
Right.
but I guess.
I know exactly what you're saying, and we.
Yeah, I just want a clear
Conversations.
definition of it.
Yeah.
This is
Right.
why we fought as auditors way back when, because we used to have to test the breakdown of TRT like 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And we went to the state auditor and said,
Sure.
this is not our role. We cannot define what qualifies and what doesn't qualify under TRT.
Right.
And none of this has any bearing on their financial statements. And so it's out of our scope. It's just like if we go test the justice courts, we were testing the dismissal of cases. Well, we're not judges. We cannot determine whether or not it's reasonable. A judge says, I'm dismissing this case, and the reason that he gives, that's not my job to determine whether or not that's right or wrong, right? And so those are the things that we push back and say, well, look, this is out of the scope. You're asking us to do things that are not within the scope of what our audit is set up to do.
I agree that Tina came down very hard on our county attorney, that she doesn't want to hold her hand here. But I do think that we have got, if Seth is having conversations with you, that we have to get something cleared up here.
Yeah.
We have to get a clear understanding of where we're going. But Tina was pretty blunt with Stephen, our county attorney, that she does not want to hold her hands, that there's some liability here on his part, is the way I took her message.
Well,
So I'm just wondering, once again, is it the best
I'll give you
path
my
to go
opinion when we
forward?
close the meeting.
I-
I've seen the temper tantrums.
Yep.
So I'm saddened, but I feel like with Seth, I can have a conversation. So,
Well, I'm still gonna recommend that we try and set up a meeting.
I think it's a good idea too, and I think, do you wanna, if you feel like it's appropriate to have Stephen there, I personally would be
Oh, I would think we need to
I'd
add
be favor of
Stephen.
that. Right.
Stephen was
Yep.
given some clear direction and definitely needs to be there.
Great.
So what's next? Review the draft 2024 audit report, management letter, and internal controls assessment.
yeah, so the draft is pretty rough. Gabe has a pretty rough draft. We should have you guys a draft, hopefully by, if not today, by Monday, that you guys can go through and review. Specifically, Gabe's gonna tie it down to make sure that his funds tie down. As far as you guys, for the audit committee, I'd appreciate it if you kind of read through the notes. Just make sure that the wording is the way that the county wants it worded.
Okay.
I mean, they're your financial statements. It can't be a public document yet. So I would ask that it doesn't go out to the public. If you have public members that are on the audit committee, then that's fine, but it really can't go out to the public. And then I didn't see any, looks like there was, so a couple of the findings, 36 and 56, those funds, I don't know what numbers those are. Look at the trial balance. So 36. Healthcare sales tax. 56 is, I'm not seeing 56. Oh, airport, Canyonlands Airport. So those two funds were over budget for the year.
What was 56, healthcare and airport?
Yeah, healthcare and airport. And then the other one, it looks like there was one check that was over 5,000 that there was not written documentation that it was approved by the commission.
So what was that for?
I don't know what the check was. I just know the check number. So we just have listed, I can probably go back and look at the details of the check number. But in our findings listing, it's check 122588. What was that, 89?
122589.
So that one just it didn't have the written documentation that it was approved by the commission. It was over a $5,000 check. So currently, those are the only two control findings. Doesn't look like there's any other findings.
That's more or less normal, to just a couple of
Yeah,
small things like that.
yeah, more control stuff.
Right, okay.
I mean, the budget one's obviously a compliance finding.
Yeah.
The other one's more of a control finding, making sure that you guys are following your own procedures. As far as the audit process, I think that it went smooth. I don't know that Squire was as involved this year as they have. I think Gabe took a lot more of that on himself.
Yeah.
And having Steve involved, I know Steve originally, he was really excited and wanted to draft the financial statements, and he was pretty gung ho. And I think that he got a fire hose in the face. So I think he realized it was a lot more than what he was initially expecting. I think he still has the same goals. It's not going to happen as fast as he wanted it to.
Okay.
But he's doing a good job.
Yeah.
I know that he's had to get used to like the fixed asset system. I know that was an issue kind of lingering along that kind of made the audit go a little bit longer, was the fixed assets. But I think they got that. He got the system squared away. He's understanding how to print the reports to give the information that we need in the way that we need it. So other than that, I think that the process was good. It was a smooth process.
Great.
No major concerns. I mean, it's constant improvement. It's just getting better every year.
That check, by the way, was written to Randy Kelly.
What was it?
Randy Kelly was a check written to him for $7,568.
Recognize that name at all?
That was.
What was it?
Well, I'm not 100% sure. I don't know if I want to go on the record, but I think it was for the BOE.
Okay.
That's just off the top of my head. I won't follow.
Right, sure.
And really, the only concern we had with it was that there was no written documentation or signature or anything that was actually approved. I'm not saying it wasn't, but it is not documented. It didn't happen in our world, so.
So you're saying that we'll see the draft Monday?
Yeah, I can find out real quick where because he just got the updated trial balance from Steve this morning. In fact, I just talked to Steve and he said he got everything balanced. And then the Raymond James stuff, I know he's waiting for stuff for the new investment company. Okay. What's your timeline on a draft for Grand that they can start reviewing? Well, the one that's cleaner than the one that we sent yesterday, because Steve told me this morning he had all the trial balance ready. Okay. By Monday. I told him like later today or Monday. Okay. Have you got the Raymond James stuff that you needed? Okay, awesome. All right. Thanks, man. Yeah, so he said that he's putting all of Steve's changes in right now. Should be today or Monday.
Okay, and that's a draft, right?
Yeah.
And then
It'll be a draft, yeah.
it'll go to the three of us, is that right?
Yep. And anybody on the audit committee, Mark will get a copy.
I mean, the audit committee is
Gabe-
officially just the three of us.
Gabe will get a copy.
Right.
Quinn can get a copy.
Cool.
But yeah, we appreciate the feedback.
Okay.
So like if you guys go through it, like, and if you see typos, I read so many financial statements that a lot of times if there's a typo, I just read, my eyes just read over it.
Yeah,
So,
right.
You guys have one spot where Castle is spelled wrong.
where Castle is spelled wrong.
For Castle Valley. I don't know that.
Have you guys seen that thing like where they'll like mix up all the letters and they'll like have a paragraph, but then your mind still reads it? That's how my mind works. Like, it doesn't matter if it's missed.
It makes sense though, yeah, right. Just kind of makes up for it.
So, okay, well, I'm crossing my fingers that we can get all the component units. I mean, Seth knows that that's what we're waiting on.
Yeah.
And if you guys, like, I don't know if you guys wanna, like at this point, if there is trail ambassador stuff that's being counted under promotion, if we wanna do a transfer and move it to mitigation.
Some of it'll actually just come straight out of the general fund.
Yeah, so however that's getting paid for, like however it's set up, like if you know, like if you're using money, just pay it back now before we issue the financial statements. Then I'm not gonna issue a finding for it.
I think that makes far
And I
more
can-
sense.
I can tell Seth, hey, like, yes, this is what was budgeted for, this is how it was paid, but they've corrected it and let's start moving. So if you guys are proactive doing that and you agree with that, then I would rather do that than have to say, well, yeah, it's still the same as it was and we're just kicking the can down the road. Cause now we're in 2025, so.
I agree.
Yeah, that's.
Is that a Gabe question? Is he gonna know all those expenditures, where it got paid from?
He's working on the program.
I think it's a lot deeper than that, to be honest with you, John. I think it's the.
And once again, this is information from Seth. All he cares about is the trail ambassador.
Right, but it is a fairly extensive budget that they have over there, and there's been a lot of stuff diverted into there out of TRT with the idea that it qualified when clearly coming from Seth and Tina, that's not the case.
So are they saying it's not qualifying under promotion and mitigation, or
No,
just,
just
so then I would say wherever it got paid from, if it got paid from promotion, let's just transfer some money from mitigation to pay back promotion.
Right, but mitigation has all been allocated as it is, which means we would be taking it from the sheriff's department.
I
and
see,
then
I see what you're
so we just as well just come from the general fund.
Yeah, it's more or less, like you said, mitigation is more or less the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would agree at this point. I think that's wise to be done with it. And we're talking about months worth of work to try and go through all of that line by line.
Yeah,
And that's why we were considering looking to Squires or somebody to help us, when I would rather just lump sum it and be done
yeah, and then move forward.
and move forward. So that's where I am.
And then look at your 2025 and see where that's being allocated from.
Yeah. Okay, do we have anything else left on this? I know it says recommendation to commission accepting the audit report. Clearly, we can't do that. And then we were gonna discuss the RFP for the external auditor, and that would have been with Karen, some discussion there. I think we'd better push that to the next one, especially if we decide to do something like Brian and I think you both were kind of leaning towards, that we bring these component units together, have a discussion and decide what we're gonna do to control that external audit of their books as well.
And that's something that we can work on some wording to get to Karen, where she can go ahead and be looking at that
Okay.
in the meantime.
And I'd prefer not to be in that conversation. I mean, it's not.
No, I don't blame you. Yeah, right.
We totally understand.
Yeah, it's
Well,
almost a conflict of interest.
I just feel like if we're not here, you're more open.
Sure.
You're gonna say stuff that's more open, right? I don't want people to hesitate because we're here.
Yeah. No, I got it, John. Thank you.
And the final one we had on this meeting is a discussion of component units, and that's been throughout the entire meeting. I think that we've come to the point that we can close this meeting unless either you.
I don't have anything else.
So again, Larson's, and I don't know.
This is Cody. He came
Cody.
in late. Yeah, he was.
Cody,
down.
my apologies for not
You get down here before you go
knowing.
to
I appreciate both
Most
of
of you guys
you
are quiet.
Yeah.
being here and trying to help us work through this so that we can get this cleaned up. That's the goal here. But at that point, then I'll close this meeting at 10:30 on Friday, the 13th. Thanks, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thanks for pushing back too, because we like the discussions. I know that sometimes we feel like it might be getting a little bit heated, but I think that nothing gets solved if. we
No, and
don't
what
put a
you,
little
what you
emotion.
brought up, I mean, that's been the nut of the problem the whole time, is interpretation.
That's where I'm frustrated. That's
Yeah,
why,
it's
like,
hard. And-
I've always told Seth, I'm not gonna test the expenditures because